Death Wish was a movie that follows Paul Kersey, played by Charles Bronson, in the aftermath of his wife and daughter being attacked and going on a mad vigilante spree. The film has been labelled as superficial, incendiary and nasty, with many critics saying that the movie encourages violence and vigilantism. And this isn't a retrospective or a recent re-examination from decades later. Critics were saying this back in the 70s when this movie came out, and with its 50th anniversary recently passing, it came up on my radar again, and with it some of those, let's call them, unflattering reviews. I first saw the film a few years ago for the first time, and I couldn't square away what I was reading about the film with what I remember seeing. Then again, it's been a while, my sensibilities have changed, maybe my eyes for nuance have changed, so maybe it's worth looking at this film again. Are the negative reviews a part of a hysteria that is more akin to the satanic panic back in the day? Or is there something to this? The film begins with Paul and his wife returning home after a nice relaxing holiday. Regardless of your political position, one thing you can't accuse Death Wish of being is subtle. You have Paul's colleague basically being a talking head for some rather hardline opinions regarding policing and poverty.
You know what I say? Stick 'em in concentration camps, that's what I say. But what this city needs is more cops than people.
Not quite Fox News level, but it has all the charm of the average host. But regardless of how on the nose it is, it helps set up New York, in this movie at least, as being rife with crime. His wife and daughter are shopping for groceries when they're followed back by a gang of thugs led by young Jeff Goldblum in his first feature film role. The scene that follows is the most notorious from the whole movie, where the gang assault the two of them. It's harrowing and disturbing, and so it should be. It doesn't shy away from the violence, nor does it gloss over it. The only thing I'd say is odd is seeing a young Jeff Goldblum, who we see now as a well-liked, well-loved figure, playing someone so disgusting. His wife dies shortly afterwards in hospital, and his daughter is going through therapy. His life has now been turned upside down, and this is where we start to see his character change. To clear his mind, he goes on a work trip to Arizona, where he gets shown to a shooting range. Here the less than subtle political commentary continues.
You're probably one of them knee-jerk liberals thinks us gun boys will shoot our guns because it's an extension of our penises.
We also learn of Paul's nuance as a character. He's really good with guns, knows them inside and out, but after a careless hunter killed his father, he's grown to hate them. His new friend gives him a gift, which watching this nowadays I find extremely funny. Taking this package that he doesn't know what's inside on a plane, it's unimaginable nowadays, especially considering that what's inside is a gun. The film does a good job showing Paul's gradual transition from mild-mannered to ruthless vigilante without slowing down the pace. His first act of violence being a DIY job of a bunch of quarters in a sock, with him feeling like he wanted to be sick afterwards. Then when he used the gun, he still felt sick, but after the second and the third, that feeling has gone away. Bronson's portrayal sometimes gets labelled as bland, one-noted, or just called bad. While I see where people might be coming from, I can't agree with it. There's no denying that his character is going through a great deal of turmoil, sadness, grief and despair, but typically in society men are not given as much leeway to express their emotions as women are. Such emotions are seen as weaknesses, and you can't be seen as weak. Oh no, especially when your family needs you. It is expected that you are the strong one. It's a type of traditional masculinity that I feel does a disservice to the human condition. Some exceptions to this are anger and rage, and expressing that in the form of violence. And that is exactly how he uses it, and he directs that violence to those who he deems deserves it. We see him express grief privately, away from where others might see him, and his character is far from one-noted.
And what the hell are you so high about?
What the hell you want me to do, moan and groan for the rest of my life?
On one side, he's a caring, empathetic person.
Somebody ought to come. There's a man over there, he's bleeding, and nobody comes.
But on the other, he can be a ruthless killer. Other critiques say that the film condones vigilantism. Early in the film, we see a police officer tell them that it is unlikely that they're going to be catching the ones who raided his home. And this brings up the idea of the social contract between the public and the police. The contract is that the police are there to serve and protect the public. They are the ones who administer law and order. If you have something stolen, your house has been broken into, or you are attacked, they are the ones that you call. The contract also says that the public are to act within the bounds of the law and not to take the law into their own hands, even if someone has committed a crime against you. And the idea that the film floats here is that if the police cannot hold their end of the contract up, why should the public?
What about the old American social custom of self-defense? If the police don't defend us, maybe we ought to do it ourselves.
If the failure of police has led the public to find alternative justice, if they are that desperate, should the public be punished? Is the police, at least in part, to blame? It's not an argument I necessarily agree with, but it is definitely one I see the logic to. It is the circumstances that Paul is in that has made him this way, and we should ask, to what degree is he really responsible? And while critiques of this film say that the politics has gone a bit too far in this film, I would argue they haven't gone far enough. Yeah, let me explain this. It's too political to be just a simple, dumb shooter that's supposed to be a cathartic ride. At the same time, it doesn't go deep enough to be considered a deep social commentary. To me, I feel it's in this weird superposition between the two, which means it falls short of both. If you wanted a cathartic movie about a guy who shoots muggers, then why have the heavy-handed political commentary? Why have his wife and daughter be so viscerally assaulted instead of a more sanitized death scene? And why didn't he catch the guys who did it at the end? And if this wanted to be a deep social and political commentary, why didn't other themes get explored more? It feels like this movie is trying to go down the commentary routes, which makes this film all the more frustrating. I feel it would be a lot better if it asked questions like, what drives people to crime in the first place? What is the link between poverty and crime? Aren't people in poverty more likely to be the victims of crime? Are more people with guns really the answer? And now these are all questions that people more qualified than myself probably be more equipped to answer. Besides, I'm a Brit, what do I know about guns? But these are important questions nonetheless. I think the greatest misstep was failing to adequately show the consequences of violence, especially that of Paul. We see how it affects the victims of muggers and the like, but how does Paul's violence affect him? Bronson defended some of the criticisms of the film, saying that it didn't promote violence, but that violence instead does not pay. But while I can't agree with the critiques, I don't think Bronson is right either. Near the end of the film, we see him get stabbed by one of the muggers as he gets away. That's as serious as the consequences get. I fail to drive home the point of violence begets violence. What if he killed an innocent bystander? Or what if one of the muggers was just a kid? Something to give him pause and to challenge his new worldview. Drive home those consequences to him. Personally, I'm a firm believer in challenging views, especially ones that you hold. Now, if your views are really correct, then it's going to withstand any good faith scrutiny. And if it can't withstand it, then those views aren't worth holding. As well as having this as a personal belief, I think it's also good for storytelling and commentary as well. After getting treated at the hospital, he's cornered by the police, saying that he needs to leave New York and stop his rampage. So at the end of it, he doesn't experience any legal repercussions, let alone moral ones. And we have some mild sequel baiting with him going to Chicago. So looking at it now, I feel the movie fell short of what it could have been. Don't get me wrong, it's enjoyable, it's got a great pace, the violence is impactful and in your face. And the music when Paul resorts to violence really helps reflect the change he's going through in that moment. But if only it had gone a little bit further, I would have called it great instead of good. I don't think it advocates for DIY justice, but if you already agree with those points, you will see this as affirmation. Back then, media was often blamed for the bad behaviours of others, but for the most part, that silly notion seems to be behind us. And while I see where people are coming from, I also have to ask, why this film in particular? If there is outrage against movies that have a member of the public taking the law into their own hands, why not the same reaction when we see cops doing the same thing? In the 70s, we had loads of movies with cops dishing out their own forms of justice, or just flat out going for revenge. If that elicited such little reaction, then why is an ordinary Joe doing the same, getting it instead? Brian Garfield, the writer of the book is based on, didn't like the movie, claiming it glorified vigilantism, so instead went on to write a sequel called Death Sentence. The movies, however, would enjoy another 4 sequels up to 1994, and we also had a remake in 2018 starring Bruce Willis. There's no denying the influence this movie had, even to the people who haven't seen it. The phrase going full Bronson often refers to an older actor who isn't known for their action roles going full action hero. I will give this film a 7 out of 10. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. Please put down below if you think I'm on the ball or start raving mad. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you later.